G'day, today's reading is James chapter 4 and 5. And the bit that I wanted to focus in on is verses 1 to 6 of chapter 5. So I'm sure you've already read it, but I'll read it to you and then I'm going to have a short reflection on this passage. This is what it says. Now listen, you rich people, weep and wail because of the misery that is coming on you. Your wealth has rotted, and the moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workers who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvested have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered the innocent one who was not opposing you. These are the words of James, and these are the words of God. Now, it might be that you hear this as a warning to you because you are, like verse 1 says, a rich person. And this is certainly a warning against those who are rich. But I think a huge part of what James is saying here is actually not as a warning to the rich, but as a comfort to those who are oppressed, which would have likely been a much bigger proportion of the people that he is writing to in the early church. That's actually why that when you get to verse 7, it says, for the brothers and sisters to be patient until the Lord's coming. Because the implication is that they will finally get justice on that day rather than condemnation. It's expected that the brothers and sisters should be patient until the Lord's coming because that day will be good for them, not bad for them. So this is a reminder to God's people that the things that are visible in this world, things like wealth and riches and luxury and self-indulgence, these things are not all that there is. A day will coming where God will call those who oppress for their own benefit and who push other people down in order to bolster themselves up. Those people will face judgment. Things will be made right by God. And I just wanted to bring a reflection on that day that I've been reading in a book called Vital Signs by John Dixon and Simon Smart. This is what they say about that. Our passage reminds us of a very important biblical emphasis. The theme of God's judgment is not simply a theological scare tactic designed to make the non-religious more religious. Judgment is the pledge of the loving God to oppressed humanity that he hears their cry for justice and will one day bring his justice to bear on every act of tyranny. There is no question the Bible speaks of judgment in other contexts as well, like hypocrisy or idolatry, but judgment is frequently proclaimed as a promise from the loving God to his wounded people that he will one day reverse their fortunes and bring justice to the world. The day of judgment is not a day to feel embarrassed about. It is God's day of justice and compassion. We live in a world of unspeakable injustice. Every now and then we catch a glimpse of it when a sex slave trader is caught profiting from the misery of teenage girls, or an African official is exposed for selling aid for weaponry. But these glimpses are just that. Beneath the surface, every day, in every country, oppression and tyranny are rife, and that is why there is a judgment day. We are not to have a morbid fascination with punishment or take pleasure in the thought of others facing God's wrath. We thank God for Judgment Day because we sincerely long for him to right the terrible known and unknown wrongs of the world. James teaches us to rejoice in the coming judgment precisely because on that day, the Lord's compassion and mercy toward wounded humanity will be fully known. I think that is a wonderful reminder to us about why Judgment Day is actually something to be proud of. It's not something to be embarrassed about. Let me finish with a prayer that is also in this book. My Creator and Judge, thank you for your promised day of justice. Comfort my brothers and sisters who suffer at the hands of oppressors, and help me to be an instrument of good in your name. For Jesus' sake. Amen.